Hello, my name is Paula Gooder, and I'm in conversation with Rowan Williams about his latest book, Discovering Christianity. We're going to start in the first chapter, which is called What is Faith? So Rowan, in this chapter, we're just thinking about faith and what it means. And I was really captivated by your description of faith as being that which is beyond the measure of what we can think or see. Why do you call it that?
Why we call it faith? I suppose because the word faith originally means something a bit more like trust. A trust that the world is bigger than our own minds and hearts can contain. A trust that there's more to be discovered, and that the journey into discovering this is one in which we're accompanied, guided, you might say, or invited and drawn in. So faith as exploration, I guess, is very much at the centre of what I'm trying to say there.
And I think, in a way, what you're touching on in that chapter is that sense that many of us have, is that there is more to the world than what we can see, what we can hear, what we can encounter. Have you had yourself experiences in which you have that sense that there is something beyond?
In very different ways, yes. It's something which, for me, comes through often in music, both listening and performing. It's something which classically comes through with certain kinds of landscape, certain kinds of environment, where you're aware that you're not the focus of it all, but you matter. And that's quite a difficult balance to get, because a lot of our mindset is, well, I'm the centre of all this, I'm where it all happens. And it's not that your selfhood is cancelled or swallowed up, but just you realise, as you do when you're singing in a choir, it's important that I'm here, but actually this is not all about me.
And what would you say to somebody who said, I've never really had that? Because I think there are some people who really do have that very strong sense of something or someone beyond them, who in Christianity we call God. But I think there are other people who don't have that sense. What would you say to them?
I think I'd want to spend a bit of time with them, exploring those bits of their experience where something like that actually does happen, even if they don't speak in those terms. People who've got experience of sport and art, often if you dig a bit, you'll find there is something there where they've recognised they're part of something bigger. People who maybe through their children have discovered that. Maybe in doing some particular kind of work with others where they've forgotten themselves and been caught up in something more. Even if it's a matter, let's say, of, care for somebody, looking after somebody who's seriously ill, responding to a crisis. And looking back, they might say, I don't quite know where I went in that period, but I was caught up in something. So it doesn't have to be what you might call a standard religious experience, capital R, capital E, but that consciousness that there's more going on, and that, as I say, you're not the centre of it all.
And you said earlier that faith is sometimes tied up with the word trust. But I think the word faith is quite interesting, isn't it? Because it can feel as though it's ephemeral, it's quite hard to tie down. That phrase blind faith that people like to use, as though there are the things you can know, and then those strange people who have that extra bit, which is blind faith. How would you kind of cast that word faith in those terms?
This is really why I want to connect faith with exploration. It's not as though faith gives you a whole set of extra facts that other people don't know, as if you've got access to an extra page of answers at the end of the textbook. It's not that you're given a whole lot of propositions about how the world works, which other people can't know because they haven't taken this leap of blind faith. Leap of faith, that's another phrase.
Yes, that's the other one, isn't it? Yes.
I want to say it's much more like the trust that somebody has on a slightly murky day when they're putting one foot in front of the other, testing the ground, finding what's load-bearing, walking on, finding gradually that the view changes as you walk. Now that to me is faith in the sense of trust, trusting, as I said earlier, that you're entering into a new landscape and that you're not alone in it.
And there's another word I feel the need to bring in at this point, because we put faith and trust. And the third one, which sits alongside those two, is belief. And one of the interesting things I think about the English language is that belief and faith do sound to our ears as something quite different. Whereas within the early Christian tradition, the belief and faith, the English words translate the same Greek word, don't they? What do you think is the difference between belief and faith? Where do they join?
In the way we usually use words, belief tends to be a bit more about the propositional end. We believe that something is the case. At the same time, it doesn't completely abandon that sense of trust and relation. Believing in something is also having confidence in something or someone. I really believe in so-and-so. Means I have confidence. I'll put my money on that. And I think, although there's very definitely a set of beliefs that belong with Christian practice, Christian behavior, beliefs that kind of sum up or crystallize the kind of world we think we're living in, that's not quite where it begins. There's that element of saying, well, actually, I've got confidence that this is, broadly speaking, the environment in which I can live, in which I can flourish, the people I can rely on. There's an inheritance of wisdom and vision that I can inhabit with some degree of confidence. And yes, the words follow, the creeds and the formulae, they follow. You don't start with those, but that's where they go to. They're expressions. They're, as I say, crystallizing a habit of confidence.
And I think we often talk about faith, belief, trust in situations in which it feels relatively simple. I'm thinking of a lot of conversations I have with people who have begun their journey of faith, and it felt to them they did, as you talked, kind of stepping forward, feeling what was load-bearing, and it felt load-bearing. And then something massive happens in their lives, a big bereavement, something unexpected, or they look at the news and they see some tragic event, and they begin to doubt whether, in fact, whether that what felt load-bearing is now, in fact, load-bearing. What would you say to those kinds of people who are beginning to say, well, I did. I started on my journey of believing, but it just feels like it's not working for me anymore.
With anyone who expresses that kind of story, I really want, first of all, to sit down and explore that with them and why and how it wasn't working and what their expectations had been. And generalizations aren't very helpful. But if I had to make a generalization, I might begin by saying, look at the stories we read in the Bible. They're very seldom stories of straightforward journeys into greater certainty. Frequently, they're stories about how crises are experienced and handled. And right through the Christian tradition, there's been this persistent pattern or model, you might say. Yes, you start with it feeling fine, and then you realize that your expectations, your projections, your pictures of yourself and of God are not quite holding up as you thought they might, and you have a choice as to whether you're going to grow through that or be defeated by it. And when people, especially people writing from a deep experience of contemplative or mystical prayer, talk about entering into deeper darkness, they're talking about that dimension of faith, which probably is, in a way, blind faith, and that you don't quite see where it's all going, but it's not mindless faith or empty faith. It's something like, this supported me and fed me as I was beginning to grow. Now it doesn't really quite feel as if it is supporting me as it used to. But maybe that's just growing up. Maybe that's not losing, but growing out into something larger. Yes, we might feel some kind of simplicity is lost, but that doesn't mean that everything is lost. And it may be that the trust, the confidence that grows in that will be greater and deeper in the long run.
And have you ever had that sense that the faith that you used to have, you've grown out of, or that sense that kind of real sense of uncertainty about where faith is for you now?
Definitely, when I was a graduate student, lots of experiences then, I think I could say, put faith under real pressure. How is it going to make sense? Here's all this chaos, here's all this suffering inside and outside. Here am I not quite sure where to turn, and here is the reality of another person or a world around me, where the confusion and the pain is unmistakable. And I suppose that's where I first was aware of the need to make that choice. Either you trust what you've been given and see if it'll grow under pressure, or you walk away. Walking away has a price. Hanging in there has a price too. No cost-free decisions here.
Thank you, Rowan. We've been thinking today about what faith is. Join us next time when we think about what Christianity is.